Chapter 8 Blood Brothers 29th day, the 5th month, 697th year. The large expedition travelled by night and slept in ventilated tents by day under the shadows of dunes. Exhaustion became the norm, and even the short exposure to the sun in between walking and nightfall beat down heavily upon them. The night was only slightly kinder, as often dry winds whipped harshly around them. Dragatu did his best to keep spirits up, and often found himself carrying supplies, chatting with people, and brushing down the horses at night. And when the trials of the desert took their toll, he would stop the convoy and bury his frustration deep, holding water skins to the mouths of those that had succumbed. Eventually they reached the promised relief of the Hillfoots, and the few small springs there. They camped for a day and night, and as the second evening approached, they scaled the hills and arrived at the small canyon. Darting his gaze around those closest to him, Dragatu saw tiredness and desperation crowd their once excited faces. "It's time to show you the water source," Dragatu bellowed as loud as he could. He stood at the entrance of the canyon as people spread out amongst the trees, many of those at the back hidden. As they heard his statement, warm smiles rippled across the group, and the anticipation of seeing the water swelled inside them. "If you come forward a few at a time, we'll show you the reasons we have suffered these last couple of weeks." He beckoned first for Helana, Eunyalus, and Venon, and led the way. As his mother emerged from the canyon to behold the shimmering water, she began to cry. Venon held her hand and squeezed it gently. After a few more moments of staring at the pool, she wiped away the tears, and through watery eyes looked at her sons. "I am proud of you," she said, and gave a soft sniff. "Despite your differences, you do so much to help people. I know if your father were here, he would be so proud." She wiped away a few more tears, let go of Venon's hand, and went back to join the people. The three boys followed and began the long process of showing the water to everyone. It was worth the time and effort, though. Seeing the water restored people's faith and hope, and that was priceless. Once everyone had seen the water source and settled in groups, Dragatu hunted, returning with a stag that he gave to his friends to prepare for cooking. He then walked a distance from the camp and up the side of one of the hills. Sitting down, he could see all the little orange dots of fires and could hear distant songs and shouts of laughter. An hour passed, and he enjoyed the stillness, watching fires begin to dim as people prepared themselves to sleep. Snap! A twig broke from behind. He spun around and reached for one of his knives. "It's us," a voice whispered. Dragatu relaxed, and his brothers came and sat either side of him in silence. There was no need for words. It was enough to be unified in thoughts of their father. They had conquered so many of their fears by being there, and they were about to help people the way he would have wanted. 10th day, the 6th month, 697th year. The following days were spent clearing the area and cutting the trees down to be used for the project. Water skins and containers were filled and distributed evenly, and hunters and gatherers made sure there was a good supply of food. Groups of carpenters, tree cutters, manual laborers, and hunters were led by Dragatu and the Hanora, which helped the project stay organized and productive. The first part of the project was well underway by the 10th day of the month. The large cylinder, the structure that would hold it at the correct angle, the screw, and the large wind catcher had been made, but they still needed to be put together and built in the proper place. 21st day of the 6th month, 697th year. After another 10 days, stage 1 was complete. It was time to put together the screw mechanisms and wind catchers. Complicated and precise, their construction took all of Eunyalus' time and concentration, leaving Dragatu impatient and irritable, because he didn't have much to do. "Dragatu, can I speak with you quickly?" Rion asked, a look of apprehension on his face as Dragatu glowered at him. "What's wrong?" "Well," he paused as he took a breath. "Some Hanora have been taking more water for themselves and not giving the right amount to the workers." "Who?" Dragatu demanded. Rion named them quickly, and Dragatu asked him to gather all the Hanora together. There's something I have to deal with, Dragatu said as he walked up to his brothers. Tell the workers they can have a day off. We will begin work again either tomorrow or the next day. What's wrong? Rion asked. Nothing I can't handle, Dragatu said sharply. Rion's face dropped. Sorry, Dragatu said, feeling a pang of guilt. He stepped forward and put a hand on Rion's shoulder. It's something I need to deal with. Just take advantage of the free time, okay? He said, forcing a smile. Rion gave a weak smile back and nodded. I'll see you all when I get back, Dragatu said. He left and walked briskly to meet the Hanora, readying himself to deal with those who thought they could cheat the people. Fellow Hanora, thank you for meeting me here, Dragatu began. We're going on a scouting trip. We'll be heading north to hunt and relax. The workload has been demanding, and we need some time to enjoy ourselves. There were cheers from the group and nods of gratitude. Go get your packs, hunting gear, and bring your water. We leave in an hour from this spot. Everyone dispersed, and Dragatu went over the plan he had formulated. He would prove the truth of the accusations, and make sure it didn't happen again. The party gathered and began their short respite. They reached a small lake, and some hunted, some rested, and others chatted and laughed. This was what Dragatu had been waiting for. Everyone gather round, he called, beckoning them to him. Several minutes passed, and finally they were all in front of him, by the small lake. Dragatu got straight to the point. I need you all to empty your water into the lake. There was a lot of murmuring. The relaxed atmosphere suddenly became very tense. A few Hanora protested more than most, and Dragatu kept a close eye on them. His desire to call their bluff appeared to have worked. Empty your containers and skins one by one, Dragatu repeated, this time with more authority. Some people began to do as he ordered, and then one by one they all obeyed. Dragatu walked up the line, and most people emptied the same amount into the lake. Eventually he came to the accused, and they emptied a significantly larger volume. There were gasps and shouts from those around them. Dragatu sighed heavily. He had hoped the accusations had been false, but they weren't. As you can see, we have been betrayed, Dragatu shouted. I brought you here to expose this. The water is very precious. There has to be consequences for disregarding the rules, taking more, and for not thinking about others. His voice grew louder and louder as his arms shook. I told you we were like a family. You shouldn't hurt your family. The book of law says not to steal. If you had stolen while at home, you would have to pay back double, or work off the equivalent. We are not going to do that here. I don't want to bring shame. I do not want to bring the shame of what you've done to everyone's knowledge. However, the seriousness of your greed and selfishness must not go unpunished. Do you agree? He asked, looking around at all the Hanora. There was a pause, and a few people responded. Yes, they shouted, and as their shouts died, the rest began to nod and call out for them to be punished. Good, Dragatu replied. I will punish them. I am responsible for you all, and if people shame themselves, then they shame me. Therefore, I must deal with this as I see fit. He took a deep breath. Your punishment will be to face me in a fight. There was a ripple of confused whispers, and a few looks of uncertainty. Dragatu called out over them. People could have suffered by such selfish actions. Not having enough water could have hurt them. Therefore, it's only right you be hurt. It will make you think twice before doing it again, he said, looking at those who had stolen the water. A deep bellowing laugh erupted from the biggest man amongst those who had stolen water. Dragatu snapped his head to look. He noticed the man looked reminiscent of his father, Brannon. The man was tall, broad, and older than most there, but with the hardness and muscle that came from years of hard work. That's a joke, the man said venomously. We followed you because it would help the people. We're happy to work, but we'll take what we want. It's our right as Hanora. We have more back in our nation, so we should have more here. We are not going to be told what to do by some young lad. He looked around for support, but got none. The man's defiance and dismissal was too much, and Dragatu's anger turned to something close to rage. He clenched his fist tightly, the nails digging into his palms. Using great effort to control the emotions, he called out to those around him. Those who want justice, circle them so they cannot escape. On seeing the tense muscles in Dragatu's face and how his arms shook that Honora hesitated. However, Lenore, Rion, and Dragatu's other close friends stepped forward, feeling similar anger. The rest of the group finally followed to create a two-row circle. If you fight me, will you fight all of us? Dragatu said through gritted teeth, as he stood at one end of the circle. Choice is yours. He then pointed to one of the accused. The Honora who were in the circle pushed the man from the periphery into the center. This is ridiculous, the man who had called out before muttered, and went to walk through the circle. The people there locked together, blocking the way. Let me pass, he said with a growl. They shook their heads. Fine, but don't be angry when I beat this lad, he said, turning and folding his arms to watch the first punishment. It was the first of 7, and Dragatu worked his way through 6 of them without competition. Each fight was fair, but Dragatu's experience, strength, and anger meant he won. He made sure he punished each person with measured blows, but avoided leaving any permanent damage. The Honora got caught in the thrill and cheered as Dragatu won each fight. They took the defeated men to the side and let them recover until all the fights were over. The last fight was the man who had been the most vocal. Dragatu was tired and bruised, but he had been saving the majority of his anger. The fight began, and the man took a few heavy swings. Dragatu dodged those. However, the last powerful jab caught him square on the nose. His control slipped as the man smirked. Warm metallic blood ran over Dragatu's lip as he spat it to the ground. He glared at the man, and there was a moment where time seemed to stop. The smirk vanished. Dragatu broke the stillness and unleashed all his rage. He ran at the man and began punching, and didn't stop. The first few swings were blocked, but the relentless attacks broke through. Within seconds, Dragatu was on top, beating the man as if he were a pillow. At first, the Honora continued to cheer, but as they watched Dragatu pummel the man over and over, a shocked silence crept over them. A few shouted for Dragatu to stop, but he showed no sign of letting up. Lenore and several others ran forward, pulling Dragatu off. Lenore stood in front of him as the others held him. Dragatu, he shouted, that's enough! The rage slowly faded, and Dragatu breathed heavily as he calmed. Those holding him let go cautiously. The man still lay on his back, bleeding, moaning, and gasping for air. See to his injuries, Dragatu said, as he looked down. A few Honora scuttled over and gave the man some water and sat him up. Set camp here for the night, Dragatu added to the thin air, unable to focus fully. A few of those around him heard and spread the word. What was that about? Lenore said, handing him a cloth for his nose, when the two stood alone. Dragatu wiped the drying blood away. There needed to be punishment, he said, and took a swig of water and spat, the fluid now a tinted red. I know, and you did that. It looked like you weren't going to stop. Why didn't you stop? I don't know. His lack of remorse was wrong, and, well, I lost it. I'm sorry. It was scary, Dragatu. Dragatu hung his head, trying to know what to say. It's done now, he said weakly. Just make sure they're okay. I will. What about you? Are you okay? I'll be fine, Dragatu said, giving him a grateful smile. I just need some time to recover. I'll be back soon. Okay. I'll keep watch over the Honora. Thank you, Lenore, Dragatu said, putting down the cloth. He staggered slowly around the lake and between some trees. When the Honora were out of sight, he took off his clothes, becoming more aware of the aches and bruises. He walked forward, stepped into the lake, and crouched, submerging fully. The cold water shocked his body. His nose felt like several hornets had stung it at the same time. The pain made his eyes water, but he ignored it as best he could. He let all his breath out. When he could hold it no longer, he re-emerged, gasping for air. Gathering his senses, he walked out the lake slowly. It feels good to be clean again, he thought, like the wrongs I was responsible for had been washed away. Dragatu put his clothes back on and walked back to the camp. He let the air dry him slowly and ignored the cold night wind. As he entered the camp, Lenore approached. Better? He asked. Much, Dragatu said. What should we do now? He asked, looking towards the punished who were being watched by the Honora. Dragatu sighed, but said nothing and walked over to them. Lenore followed close behind. I'm willing to never speak of this night again, if you are, Dragatu said. We'll all keep what you did a secret if you promise not to do it again. That way your families will not know the shame you brought upon yourselves. 6 of the 7 men slowly got to their feet. They apologized and agreed they wouldn't do it again. The severely beaten man didn't stand and said nothing. You are free to go, Dragatu said to the others. You have apologized and accepted what you did was wrong. You are our brothers, and will not be treated any different from anyone else. The men walked off, heads lowered. The last man finally struggled to his feet and stood looking intently at Dragatu. We do not need to be enemies, Dragatu said as he kept eye contact. You shouldn't have done what you did, but you fought well. Do you understand why I did what I did? There was a tense moment of silence, and the man hung his head and spoke as best he could through the pain in his face. I understand more than you realize. Dragatu went to speak, but the man looked up and cut the words short. The Hanora follow you. Yet you were just a lad. Today I've seen why. I took the water and coaxed others to do the same because I didn't think anyone would stop us. I've looked for someone to be a leader for a long time. I know I could never be, but I've never found anyone I could put my faith in. He caressed his face, wincing with some of the pain, and then continued. That's all changed. What's wrong about you? If you accept my apology, I would like to promise my friendship and commitment to you. The reaction was not what Dragatu had expected. There was something about the words that reminded Dragatu of himself. He realized the man just needed direction. His own had come from his father and the Book of Law, and this was a chance to honor both. Nothing would make me happier, Dragatu said, extending an arm. The man took it, sealing a new bond of respect and tentative friendship. What's your name? Dragatu asked. Honrus. Would you like to get some food and sit with me at my fire, Honrus? Dragatu asked. I would like to know more about you. Only for a little while. I'll need to get some rest to heal these injuries. By the look of you, you should rest as well. They laughed as they walked to Dragatu's path and talked about their histories. Some of the Hanora watched in confusion. Others smiled with the understanding, knowing the mutual respect that can form between those who overcome the differences through blood and pain. Dragatu listened and learned that Honorus was 41 years old and a wealthy blacksmith. He was a widower with no children. He had very few friends, but he was content with his work and going to the ore pits. After talking longer than they had anticipated, Honrus finally had to submit to the pains and excuse himself. Dragatu watched Honrus walk away. Who would have thought a few hours ago that this man would become my friend? He shook his head in amused disbelief, lay down and pulled his blanket over him. All his regret for his loss of control was swallowed up by the positives that had come from it, and he slept well. 22nd day, 6th month, 697th year. The sun's approach turned the sky to grey blue, and the Hanora stirred from their rest. Recalling the drama from the day before, Dragatu spoke to his friends and asked them to gather everyone together. Everything that took place yesterday should be forgotten, he said once everyone was gathered. I have spoken with those who betrayed us, and they have promised never to do it again. In turn, we will not bring shame to them and their families by telling them what they did. Tell anyone that asks about our injuries that we got carried away when wrestling. Does everyone agree to this? Dragatu looked around. Most of the Hanora nodded, but some had unreadable expressions. He ignored those blank looks. Thank you for your continued support. We shall go back to help the workers now. They set off and arrived back at the camp about halfway between high sun and dusk. What happened to you? Yelana asked as Dragatu walked back to the spot where his family camped. Just a few bruises from wrestling. Nothing to worry about. I know when you're lying, Dragatu. What happened? Please, just leave it. She frowned, but didn't say anything. Sorry, Dragatu said and sighed. I need you to trust me. I've done what I had to do to put everything right. If there was something wrong, you should really have spoken with Nihilus and Phenon. Why should I have spoken with them? Dragatu asked, his forehead creasing. You've done what you felt was right, but sometimes it's good to get other opinions. The brothers might have been able to help in a way you hadn't considered. I didn't need them. I could deal with it myself. You know I don't mean to say you couldn't. No one doubts that, least of all me. They have different strengths that might help. A memory of Brannan flitted before Dragatu's mind. Before it could take root, Yelana continued, compassion swelling in her voice. All I ask is you try to include your brothers more. I'll try, he said grudgingly. The subject was over, and he put down his pack, casually said goodbye, and went to find Rion, Linur, and the rest of his friends. 5th day of 7th month, 697th year. A few more days of rest were granted, and the project continued. The cylinders for the small screw mechanism, screws, and the brackets to hold them in place were made and meticulously put together. Unitas kept watch over the whole process. The manufacturing of the wind catchers was constructed in the same way, and a medium-sized pool was dug at the top of the last hill nearest the desert. The first test of the project took place. Cogs joining the large wind catcher and the cylinder with the screw inside were connected, but both could be removed with ease. The height of the wind catcher allowed it to catch good winds, and as the wind blew, it turned the cogs, and in turn the screw. The water was taken from the lake by the rotation of the screw, and flowed up the channels. Trigatu followed it as it moved around the valley, meandering through the wooden channels. There was an archer on standby with a flaming arrow, ready to fire it into the sky to signal the flow to be stopped if there was a problem. Eventually the water reached the top of the hill, and 2 fire arrows were shot into the air to signal that it had worked. Cheers echoed as the confirmation signals flew through the air and made their descent toward the ground. Finally, the pool was filled, and 1 arrow was shot to signal that the water flow should be stopped by the main cog of the large catcher being disconnected. The darkness of night was creeping in as Hilana, Finon, Unitas, and Trigatu entered the camp. There were shouts of celebration and congratulations to the brothers. People rushed to Unitas and thanked him for all he had done, shaking his hand and patting him on the back. Trigatu watched, struggling internally. I was the one who made this work, he thought. I was the one who had to organize the people. I had to oversee everyone, and I had to punish those who stole water. And now they're thanking Unitas more. Guess it doesn't matter, he finally thought, struggling to shrug it off. It works, and people will be so happy when it's finished. I know Father would have seen how important I am in this project, and I know the Creator knows. With this thought, he let the people continue to thank Unitas. He went to find Honrus. They sat and ate, laughing and talking about how they had reached a great point in their people's history. 3rd day of the 8th month, 697th year. Construction had become routine and second nature for the workers. With everyone applying themselves, the work progressed well. At last, the nation was in sight. People came to greet the workers with food and supplies, and to see their loved ones once more. It was a glorious occasion. There was still work to be done, though, and after a slight delay, the last channels were finally connected to the reservoir in front of the massive audience of workers and people. Cheers and claps roared as it was finished. It was now time for Trigatu to return with Unitas to let the water flow freely. Can I come? Finon asked as they talked as a family about the imminent journey. No, Trigatu replied straight away, almost laughing at the request. It will be a boring trip. There's no need for you to come. But I want to come. Please, Mother. I'll be safe with Trigatu. The plea to Hilana annoyed Trigatu, but he knew she would say no. I think it would be a good idea if he went too, Hilana said, to his surprise. Trigatu was about to argue, but his mother cut him off. I trust you, Trigatu. The words and how they were said softened his heart. As you wish, he replied. He turned to Finon. You must be careful at all times and do as I say. Do you understand? Of course, Finon said, a massive smile spreading across his face. 18th day of the 8th month, 697th year. Finon's light-hearted nature was contagious and made the harsh journey almost enjoyable. They reached the water project and attached the main cog, lowered the screw device, and locked it in place. As they walked down the hill towards the desert, Finon spoke. You know what would make journeying here and back easier? Unitas and Trigatu looked at him inquisitively and waited for the answer. Well, I don't see why we can't put little holes in the channels across the desert. The water would drip to the sand in the areas here and in the nation. Surely the grass would eventually spread and join to make a green path that was easy to walk on. Both Trigatu and Unitas were stunned. Then Trigatu spoke. Theoretically, that sounds good, but it would waste the water. The people need every drop they can get. Unitas stopped walking, thinking very hard. Trigatu could see he was going to side with Finon, and let out a sigh of frustration. He was about to try and back up his argument further when Unitas spoke. It is a good idea. There are greater consequences to this. If it can make the area fertile, then there can be more farmland for future generations. It would also give more access to the north and for people to explore. It's a good idea. We should make a tiny hole every so often. Trigati could see the logic and gave up his argument. It made the journey longer, but from time to time they climbed up the big wooden legs of the channels and made a hole, letting water drip to the warm sand below. Second day of the 9th month, 697th year. The work was finally over, and the three brothers couldn't help grinning as they walked through the streets. People came to greet them and offered their thanks, and as before praised Unitas the most. Trigati's jealousy crept back in, and he tried to fight it, but it became too much. He told his brothers he was going to go see some friends and left. After walking the long way to Renon's, he realized he didn't even want to speak to any of his friends, and found a quiet space to sit and update his journal. Journal entry, the second day of the 9th month, 697th year. I know I shouldn't be jealous, but I've worked so hard. I should be getting more thanks than you, Nihilus. My friends show their thanks, but why don't the other people? Guess I'll have to work harder, and then they'll thank me more, the way Honrus does, and the way my father would have. In the weeks that followed, there were clear signs the water project was a benefit to all the people. For the poor had been prioritized, but eventually water became abundant to all. People became healthier, crop growth improved, grass was greener, the gap between rich and poor decreased, and everyone was a lot happier. The summer ended with almost all the people healthier and happier. Autumn and winter went by like a dream, and as always spring arrived, as the bearer of new things, but it also brought back the old.